Let the record show that member Ron Padova is absent from today's meeting and member Devin Aaron.
Here. Good, thank you.
All right, I'd like to, I don't know if anybody has any comments on the minutes.
Oh, there is none at this time.
Oh, there's not?
No,
Okay.
none at this time.
Gotcha, okay. Get that. Any comments from the public or the audience before we go? Any things that we need to take a look at?
Sorry. Any comments or inputs from the audience or anybody to get started here that we consider for today? Hearing none, we'll move on. Okay, had an opportunity to do some follow-up with the county. We'll talk about that. That's one of the topics today. I think I was hoping that Sean might be here today. Chris was following up so we could have some conversations from our last meeting on the planning and zoning components and how we wanted to go forward with that. So that's where I was. No other general stuff other than I think we had some good stuff from the meeting with Pasco County on how to do outreach. And one of the things that I'll just land out here for the city to be thinking about from our county meeting was that given our economic condition and such, that for our size, what we're being told is that there's virtually a limitless supply of dollars available to us. To the extent my takeaway on it was we're only constrained by our capacity of what we could handle. So I believe some of the things we talked about, the fire station as one topic, maybe things on the roadside as well. But I don't know everything that's in the hopper. So maybe a brief update at that so we can figure out how much bandwidth we have, what can we potentially go after, and is there more that we can put on the plate but we don't want to swamp ourselves. So with that, why don't we go around the horn and just updates on things. I'll start with you.
I don't have anything. I don't have any updates right now at this moment.
Okay, cool.
Some might come, but none right now.
All right. Devin?
I'm still working on kind of a maybe like some suggestions that we could bring to council for sort of improving the standards for things that are built under the whatever it is 12-foot line or whatever it is for the FEMA. Like sealing your studs and instead of putting back drywall, hardy board or PVC or whatever, because to raise these houses it's like $150 a square foot, and it doesn't really make economic sense to do that. This feedback's really killing me here. And the FEMA thing makes sense why they put that in place with the 50% rule. In some places it's like 15% and whatnot. But the problem is we're a very unique place, and a one-size-fits-all thing across Florida or federally doesn't really make sense for everybody. And I think when these rules were put in place, the cost of labor, materials was different. And now we have, crappy materials like drywall. It's expensive, and the labor to put it in is expensive. So I think that maybe rather than raising some of these houses when these disasters come through, which they're going to come through and they're going to be problematic for us and we're going to have to rebuild, instead of raising them right off the bat, maybe we fix them properly so that there's not giant piles of crap of drywall and construction debris outside in our neighborhoods. Maybe it's just furniture, and maybe it's a little more palatable. Maybe instead of having base plugs a foot or 2 feet up, maybe we mandate that when we have to rebuild, we put them 6 feet up. Little things like that can make this community more resilient and on more of a better footing going forward for people who don't really have the money to rebuild or elevate or whatever it might be. And I think we're kind of in a funny in between spot. But I cringe because a lot of my neighbors, they're doing the best they can, but they're really just putting it back the way it was. And the problem is like, next year, does this happen all over again? And that's really the issue. And a lot of time, and with Idalia, the year prior, a lot of people just rebuilt their houses, and this just happened again. And they're sick to their stomach, but they're still doing the same thing.
Well, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great approach. I guess the one thing when you discuss the post-mortem component,
Mm-hmm.
we're bringing it all the way up to the federal level, which is a big challenge because if you look at the federal insurance and stuff, that's a nationwide thing. So going against that windmill will be a big challenge and stuff. And I'm wondering, based on what you're talking about, if maybe a slight shift to say, forget about Helene and Adelia and when damage occurs, because that's when the game starts.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe what we should be looking at from your perspective is saying, what kind of grants are available out there in our potential community to improve my home now, beforehand, not after the fact, beforehand. So if I was to say I can get you a grant for $50,000 to improve the resiliency for mitigating damage. So if a storm occurred, I only had 10% damage versus 60%, then maybe that's something we could do for the community, then that people could go and look for grants, and maybe there's no cost to them, maybe there's some cost to them, but there's probably a whole litany of flavors out there.
Yeah.
But and getting concrete walls or getting pressure treated lumber or any of that type of stuff, instead of looking at it as a postmortem, look at it as before the fact.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole. Certainly, the question, what should you do?
Right.
Is
Right.
one piece. Okay, so we could maybe provide some. Maybe there's things out there that talk about the things that you can do. If you
Yeah.
could bring that to the table, we could say, hey, yeah, that makes sense for us because we're on the coast and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And then here's potential grant funding that could be done. Instead of paying $100,000 for cleanup,
Right.
maybe it's $50,000 for getting your home in its shape that mitigates that. My classic example is nobody lived on the beach if they didn't have needed their head examined because
Yeah.
you knew you were going to get water. So, but today I think people look at it more as a permanent, established
It's not.
castle, right?
Yeah, it's not.
It's not. So what can we do in that line? So I guess my 2 cents worth
Yeah.
would be to look at it from that perspective, not necessarily cleanup, but going forward, a year from now, somebody buys a home where somebody decided to go. If you're renovating, the city has these suggestions or recommendations. There's these potential grants that are available, and there's all these types of things. So
Right.
instead of getting your regular contractor to go do that. I'm sorry, Matt.
Chris, when we were talking about grants, you talk like state or federal grants, or where's the grants coming from?
My earlier statement,
Yeah.
basically, a lot of federal stuff available. A lot that we didn't get down to specifics. I mean, we could talk about.
So as it relates, that's all I needed. So as it relates to your home, if you're getting any money from the state or feds, they're going to ask this one question: are you in a high hazard flood area?
Yep.
And the answer is yes. They're going to say, oh, so your home is above the base flood, correct? And we're going to have a lot of people say no, and they'll say, sorry, you have to raise your house.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable and feasible today, but I think if we go to our politicos and say, hey, look, we don't want to hit the flood side. What we want to do is try to get some money set aside for bypassing that hit that the flood insurance program takes.
I'm with you.
So that's,
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to give you the reality though is when you know they're going to circle all back because I mean
Right.
I think the state right now, I can't say the federal government, but I can say the state right now is in pretty good lockstep with, if you're getting money to improve personal, homes or anything like that. And I think actually CDBG, which is another source of money for renovations of homes that some of our residents actually, today could go to the county and work with them to get, I don't know what the limits are, but $50,000 or so to do renovations of their home, to bring it up to compliance. But the limitation is going to be, are you, located in a flood hazard area? And if so, then it kind of goes back to, okay, are you elevated or not elevated? Well, we're not elevated. And then it'll be, well, you can use money to elevate, but not do the renovations that you're talking about.
I think where if I put my optimistic hat on and we go,
Not the government, by the way, but go ahead.
I know it's the government, I understand it's the government, but we have a disadvantaged community. We have people that really can't afford to do these things. In particular, even today's programs, if I don't have the dollars in the front end, I can't play, bottom line. So you're really making a severe disadvantage for people in the community. And there's much of this in the state, particularly in the middle of the state, both on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I think if we could come up with a package that said, hey, look, and show them the numbers, okay, by doing these types of things that we know are bulletproof. And there's a lot of things that are percolating out post-storm that are relatively bulletproof. If people would be willing to walk down that path, certainly some compromises on their home domicile, but if they're willing to walk down that path and we can spend $50,000 instead of $150,000, that's got to be an attractive option from a taxpayer standpoint and at the federal level if we get to the right people to make the pitch. But we got to have the story.
Yeah.
We don't have that today.
Yeah.
But I guess
that was my only thing that I was pointing out is that today you're kind of limited in what you get grant wise for your home if you didn't meet the qualifications that they're going to put there. That are you in the flood hazard area?
Yeah.
If so, are you above base flood level?
right. And if you're not, and I think I'm willing. I've bounced my head against the wall, the government, for quite a while, and so I understand how it could go. But in order to kind of get a potential walk forward with Devin here on his, maybe there is something that we can do. Not simple, but maybe given our size, we can say, hey, at least try it.
Yeah.
And if we got 10 homes better than they were, it's not going to cost them a whole bunch, but they can at least say, oh yeah, that doesn't work. But we got 10 people's homes in a better state than they were.
Right.
So that's kind of, I'm willing to play the game personally to go run that, windmill down possibly, if we could have the story.
So I'm not a grant guy. I'm not a government guy. I'm a real person who's rebuilding some homes right now. So I have knowledge from that I'm playing with in my head, and I'm thinking about what it costs to raise a house versus fix a house, and then do we fix it? In what way are we fixing it? Are we fixing it to withstand a 15-foot storm surge? Are we fixing it to withstand a 10-foot storm surge? So what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to do is give something to council, for us to give something to council, a recommendation, say, hey, let's make everybody spend 30% more or whatever it is, a little bit, and let's actually make these houses in the event that bad things happen. We can actually, just throw out our furniture and put a new house in there and be done, rather than rip out the walls and rip out all these things, because people are putting back drywall and just crap. They're not raising the outlets. Some people aren't doing anything, and it's a health hazard. it's going to happen again. I believe, we have like, an earth that's changing and we're like little ants running around and, we might think we know, but we really don't know. And I think that it would be wise for us to be thoughtful. I think there's, when you have such a wide spread between replacing it, raising it, and just fixing it, and I think you can get more value out of just fixing these things rather than ripping down or raising if you do it in a manner that's more common sense, more flood proof. Let's like flood proof these like little houses that are on base flood elevation, because our city doesn't have enough money in it quite yet and enough growth and pressure to really rip these houses down and redo them. They're doing that in Tampa. They're doing that all over. But we're in like a weird, funny spot in between. So I'm trying to, make some common sense things to where like a guy like me, I own my stuff, so I don't have insurance. So I'm rebuilding my stuff under these, thought patterns. And if we get another flood, I don't even care. I'm going to throw away some furniture and appliances and I'm going to move on with my day.
Well,
and it doesn't cost that much money.
Can you take this and bring back a solution?
I'm working on that right now,
Okay.
but I'm kind of bouncing around the room so everybody knows sort of my thoughts before I.
So Devin, I think, brings up a good point in his earlier statements about what is the level that we're building to, right? Are we building for a 10-foot surge or 15-foot surge? I mean, understand if it's over your roof,
It's done.
yeah. I mean, there's
So
no point, and I don't even know what that surge would look like to get there for a lot of houses.
Crazy.
But we had it. I mean, we were up to some roof lines in the city in this last go around. But I was thinking that maybe the way to kind of answer that question in the vulnerability analysis, they do those different scenarios, right? And maybe that's something that this committee should pick and say, this is what in the next 100 years and again, I don't remember what the numbers are in terms of the height, but this is what we want to build to.
2070 is our target for everything is 2070. That's what we're orienting around today on everything that we're looking at. And then if there's an interim step for like 2040 or something like that, but all our decision, particularly on the city infrastructure, is geared towards a 2070. We didn't know exactly what that meant. We didn't know if that was the right number, but that's the dart that we threw. That's our starting point. So going back to the vulnerability, I can't quote you a number right offhand, but the 2070 threshold is what we're shooting for.
Okay.
That's not going to deal with a significant storm event. Okay, that's just the sea level rise component that's described in the vulnerability assessment. So,
but they do in that when you pick that, it does have the analysis of what these different types of storms, 100 year, 500 year. Mm-hmm. So you could then pick, which one. I mean, to me, it's like kind of like a store putting in parking. Do you put it in enough into park all the people coming to your store in Christmas, or do you put just enough that will suffice for the everyday and then deal with the big surge, right? I mean,
right.
So I mean that's I think what needs to be done there, so he can understand me, because again, convincing everyone to put their outlets 6 foot up, there'll be a lot of interior decorators who won't like that, right? But again, maybe it's 4 foot, or maybe it's a different height.
I think kind of like little, because here's my thought process. We had to replace most of our outlets in these single level homes, right? That got wet. The actual receptacle needs to be replaced because it's rusting and corroding internally, right? So if you just move that receptacle up, you just gained yourself feet of resilience to a disaster like this happening again.
That's true, but I hope we look a little further than that.
Well,
do we need outlets at all?
Right.
Do we need outlets at all?
Yeah, we need outlets.
Maybe not.
No. We need outlets. Period. So we're not going there. But
Devin needs an outlet.
I need an outlet.
All right. You got to have an outlet.
But but really the point is that we're kind of in a funny place between rebuilding new, where we're in 2070, where we want to be, right? But the reality, the economics aren't here for us. That's the problem. So what can we do somewhere in between that's creative? I like the creative side. I like being creative. I like seeing an issue, creating a solution, and in business I profit off of it. But in this capacity, I'm going through something personally, and what I'm learning from that, I'm trying to implement to help the city so that when these people go through this again, I'm going to have the money to do it again. I don't even care. It's just but these people don't have money to do this again. And I want to make sure that my neighbors or whoever are doing this, I see them, they're putting drywall back. And I'm just like, oh my God,
Well,
we're going to do this again. I'm just a practical guy. That's where I'm coming from.
so let's take that, run with it, and then next round, bring it back
Okay.
to the table.
Okay.
How's that? Cool.
Do you guys think I'm sort of on the right track? Bob, what do you think? You're dealing with this crap too.
I'm just here to listen.
Okay.
But I think we have to have something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of things out there. I
Yeah.
think we just need to pull something together that we can
I
look
mean,
at.
you're dealing with this too. You're not dealing with this, but you're sort of dealing with this. Everybody's got their stuff they're dealing with. So I mean, now is a good time to sort of talk about it. And I just think these things are common sense, because the big federal stuff doesn't really help us, because we're kind of a poor community here, unfortunately. So that's why you said sort of in mid Florida, it's sort of that way. Because South Florida's got the money, and then North Florida, is not as susceptible to the storms as much, maybe Panama, but
Well, we just haven't tested the envelope.
Right.
So I think we have to have something that we can carry forward to see if it has legs and will hunt or not.
okay.
Because if we don't have something, we can talk about it till the cows come home, but we've got to show something and see if it'll hunt. And that's the part, that's what I'm eager to try to find straight out of the blocks. And I floated our stormwater issue here at the county, and I think maybe there's some receptivity, but I think maybe something simple and see if it hunts or not is where I'm going. Okay. Linda?
I don't have anything at the moment. I went to the meeting and I'm anxious to.
Okay, we'll get to that. The only thing I have, I talked to Michael Faustini at Warner Boyce. He was, I think, very enthusiastic. I think Linda warmed him up for me. So what I did was I invited him to our next meeting.
Yes.
It was too tight now. He's catching up on a lot of things. So he's planning on being at our next meeting. So what I'd like to do is just forward Ashley the information to him. I can get you his agenda, or I can forward it however you think is best to make sure that he comes.
If you want, send me his contact information, and when I send out the agenda, I'll send it to him as well in a calendar invite.
Perfect. He's got there's a biologist, I think I mentioned, Tracy Ziska, that works down at one of the parks down south. And he said she would be a very good asset to have involved with us. So that was good news. So that was my follow-up. Still no progress on Newport Richie. I ran one path before Christmas. That didn't play out. I got some other intelligence that I'm going to try a different path here, but I wanted to give it time to soak here. But so no new news on that front. So the other guys here, we'll just move on and go to the first item, which had to do with the Pasco County Resiliency Meeting discussions that Linda, Chris, and I had an opportunity to meet the players there. We met with Dr. Mark Bellis, who's heading the effort. They've been functioning for about a year now. And we also met with Jeff Harris, who's their freshwater ecologist and very knowledgeable. And also Anthony Thomas, who is their grants guy, if you will, that I think we have some familiarity with. And also, Alan Biddicom is the fourth of the four horse folks, if you will, that is in Dr. Bellis's organization. So we had three of them there. It's a very good session. I'm going to let Linda kick off first, and then we'll go from there. We'll give you a little bit of a background of how it went, and then if you have questions, so we can have some discussion, because we were just mostly listening as we went to the meeting. Linda?
I've already met with Matt.
Sorry, Linda.
Nope, you're,
Thank you.
I moved it over again, forgot, sorry. I've already met with Matt and spoke with him and had my notes with me and shared a lot of the information with Matt, so he's up to date on a lot of that. It was a great 2-hour meeting. It was a lot of information. All three of them were very knowledgeable and very, very willing to help us. There was no pushback at all. I felt it was very encompassing, and I think we're on a great road to having them help us and us help them as well. I mean, this is definitely going to be a team effort, and by the way they were talking, that I think we're going to be good. They gave us a lot. They gave me a lot of information that I didn't have prior to, and I appreciate that very, very much.
Right.
So you have the details, and I know, and you can speak much more eloquently on the details than I, but I'm very excited about the whole prospect of working with the county.
I think that's what the main takeaway that we had was that they sound like they've made a lot of projects. This was an early announcement, if you will. They haven't really briefed internally. Getting information from them that they haven't really discussed extensively inside. I think the main thing is they're focusing on what they're calling a university-based project called Futures. And Dr. Ping Wong is leading that effort out of USF. And he's involved in setting up coastal monitoring stations for freshwater monitoring, and also tidal issues, looking at what we can do for wave along the entire Pasco coast. And they're studying Pasco specifically. He was involved with the Houston Galveston project there, setting up what they're doing. He was involved with Katrina and the Louisiana stuff, so he's apparently the guy. So having him as a resource is really big. The other thing is they got some initial large tranche of money. They're reactivating, if you will, something called Four Rivers projects, which has to do with flooding. If you're from the area, there's only a couple of those things that were taking place historically back in the 60s. One's over in Tampa and one's in Pinellas County. But all the other efforts were kind of not looked favorably on by the politicos. So they have got funding for that. That seems to be, I categorize it as the cornerstone of their efforts going forward on a broad brush standpoint, because there's already state commitment towards it, Army Corps commitment towards it, because they know what it is, and they're basically lifting something off the shelf that's 60 years old.
Like they're revitalizing it.
Exactly. So it's a known entity, so it has legs, and they is being shovel ready,
Yes,
if you will, to some extent. So I've looked at it in the past. It's been a while. I'll need to look at it a little more closely, see if there's some hooks that we can draw down the Cody and maybe get some. A lot of it does with Cypress Creek and those areas. I think there's some for the Anclo, but I think they addresses all the watersheds, but I just don't remember what it had to do with the Cody, so I'll just hold back on that one. One of the areas that they encouraged us on was, and Matt, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the Southeast Directors Sustainability Network. Ring any bells?
Is that what was through the Tampa Bay Regional?
I think it was.
The same?
I think it was like a
A subset?
like a subcommittee of that.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was something different or a subset of that, but it was another entity to see if we had any engagement with it. If we don't, they're encouraging us to get engaged.
So I did follow up. I reached out to Tampa Bay Regional Planning. Can't remember what her name is now. And it's very exclusive apparently because they don't send out the notice to everyone. Although now I have a notice, but
Score.
they but they only wanted city staff. What she said is if you have a city staff member, we'll send it to you. So I'm a city staff member, so it was sent to me. So
good.
The next meeting I will plan on attending because it's all virtual, or for the most part it's all virtual. So I'll get to a little bit more. I think they talked a little bit. They've talked about a little bit about that at the resiliency conference, if I'm not mistaken. And then different times during the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Commission, they'll talk about it as well. So
It sounded to me like some of the potential project discussions and positioning for potential projects went on in those types of forums. So it seemed very relevant for us to be tuned in on that.
based upon the tight knittedness of those meetings, I would say there's something going on there.
There's certainly posturing that goes on with the counties and through the Tampa Bay Regional Planning, but maybe this is new enough that we can shoehorn in to some extent. Let's see. Anthony Thomas has a lot of connections with Ping Wong, and I know Jack's office and some of the commissioners as well. So I think whatever we can do, we talked conceptually with them about establishing a technical committee, and if they my takeaway was they viewed Ping as really the focal point on that, but making sure that we had a broader base, I still believe is relevant. But the other Anthony talked about was of funding that was available, and this was my takeaway. We talked about the fire station and our grants for that. I think there was one other project that you mentioned, but basically what I came away from that session was if we can describe it and say what we want, there is non-matching funds available. So we don't have to come forward with anything from the city, given our size and the criteria. So what I came away with is like as much as we could handle, we could probably get. So I don't know. I think from my standpoint, it would be helpful to know what we've got in the hopper from the storms, and then anything else that we can identify and go after, stormwater, roads, whatever. If we can do things without matching funding from the city, I think we can go after it. But that was a major emphasis, Matt.
Yeah, so we have, I think from a state perspective, what they've been kind of pushing all the communities through, the vulnerability analysis first, and then the adaptive
action plans.
Yeah, that's fun. And they put, I'm not even sure how much, few $1 million every year, maybe 12 million. I can't remember what the number is. And so they're at almost the end of every community in the state of Florida doing that. And so their next phase is now looking at the either actually funding construction of adaptability plan items or doing the studies for those. And so we submitted sometime last year, maybe in the fall, when we put two in at the time. One was for the fire station and to help fund the program study we need to do for the fire station. That's the next step, is figure out what it is we need to build, right? And where. We also put in a planning grant for the Bay Boulevard. So from basically Wilkins to Old Post Road, possibly beyond if we can fit that in there. But the calls for us to raise those areas, right? And we're looking, besides raising it, trying to enclose the pipes, the open swells now, because everything's kind of connected there. And so we've applied for that. We probably won't get those because there's still enough communities seeking the first round of funding that they'll prioritize those first. But we'll at least have them in for the next round. I mean, basically, we have put together for the next round so we can resubmit them and they're familiar with them. We're also, as it relates to Bay Boulevard, Fire Department, all of our lift stations, the Indian Mound, trying to think, and I'll explain the importance of the Indian Mound in a second.
So back up a second. So we're pursuing these how?
So we've applied for grants through that, the Florida Resiliency, I think, is what the funding is. It's the same program that funded our vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan.
Okay.
So that was the first one. So now these other areas we are pursuing first with the Army Corps of Engineers. And also FEMA. I mean, it's actually kind of a twofold. So, we're looking at 1026 or 2026 or 1606. I don't know what the numbers are. But looking at funding for some of these things through FEMA, the mitigation program, HDP, something. Someday I'll have all these memorized.
It'll never happen.
Yeah, I hope not. But anyhow, so like our lift stations, we need to harden, raise, whatever we can do to our lift stations so they can survive whatever comes our way.
Right.
FEMA's interested in that through the mitigation grant. So, we just received notice that we got four generators approved through the HDPT, whatever it is, program. And so we're kind of going the same way with hardening of our lift stations. At the same time, it was actually something that we had a conversation with the county early on in the whole storm scenario that led to them setting up a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers, which I kind of laughed at the whole Four Rivers thing because that's where that came up. It was actually Army Corps brought that up to the county that plan was out there. Resurrect that plan. It's already an established Army Corps project. Then it's easier to create the next project. And so they've flashed on to that. At the same time, I submitted a same time our own project to the Army Corps, and that was primarily looking again at not only primarily Bay Boulevard in that area, fire station, and all of our lift stations, and the Indian Mound. And again, if I keep bringing up the Indian Mound, is the only way to protect the Indian Mound is to do something with all of Sunset. And so I see that as kind of the linchpin and there is money to protect these type of cultural and heritage.
That's the only one I'm aware of in the city. Are there any others that we're aware of?
I don't think there's any other that's been, there isn't anything that's been identified, but I can't believe that there isn't.
Do we have any resource in the city that can go with, reach out to the state, Florida Archaeological, I can't think of the proper name, but they've got a list of all sites that have been since the development, and I've pursued it up on in Arapica on things, and they have a whole litany of information. May I suggest if we have somebody that can reach out for our boundary and get everything that they have on the record, because the nice thing about archaeological sites, they never go away. So if we bring them to the table and they're scattered through around the river and our community, that's a big ace that we can play for anything. because the Mound is the only one I really know about right now.
Yeah.
Dollars to donuts, from what I've looked at, and the information, and the folks at the state are pretty nice. They actually can extract that stuff, and you can get it all. And I think any funding that we have going forward, if we can bake that in, that would be a major score.
Yeah.
So we'll leave that with you.
Yeah, and the and that was a part of the vulnerability analysis, and that's the only one that I believe was flagged in term. Which again, I don't necessarily think that was done to the degree that it should have been done. I mean, I think there could have been more, but it is what it is now. So yeah, we can look into that, because again, I think that is an avenue when we're putting grants together, especially the type that we'd be looking for, identifying those cultural / heritage type assets. Just they look better, and they score some more points that we need to do.
When I get back, I'll go through my records and I'll get the state entity. But I think if we start a dialogue there, that'll give us some ammunition on that front that will really complement anything else that we do, particularly because along the river, there's got to be things, and we just don't know about them. And
Yeah.
they've got stuff. The early surveys were done in the 60s and 50s. And what I learned from my exercise is they're always there. They never go away. So for grant funding consumption, they're valid because we can point to a document that says they exist.
So actually, just got something earlier from the Army Corps, and we've been trying to set up a meeting to discuss this more. The last discussion I had with them, they weren't too impressed with helping us on the fire station, because they believe that for whatever reason, the water comes from all over to flood the fire station. And so the Army Corps doesn't really care about that. They want they want a connection between the waterfront and what they're protecting. So they weren't too thrilled with doing anything, but still in the air, because I'm not giving up on that. But they were very interested, obviously, in our lift stations, Bay Boulevard, and the Indian Mountain. Although, see, this is, and my caution to you is, a lot of people talk about a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know a lot of what they're talking about. And my conversation with the Army Corps was that they kind of put the county off, that there wasn't any viable in the projects that they were looking at. There wasn't any viable project for them to talk about. Now I had a conversation. You were there, and they seem to think that there is a project, and the Army Corps is working with them.
The county.
The county, right? So I don't know. I just know enough to know there's a lot of people talking about different things that aren't the same, and it concerns me. So I just you got to be careful when people say this is going on, because that again, the Fort River project didn't have anything to do with us,
right?
And so if they're pursuing that, it's for the eastern side, not for us.
Middle needs.
Yeah.
I personally believe that we need to use the river to hook the Army Corps directly. And I think if we can figure out what exactly we want to hook them with, what we want to protect, those types of things, then, say we need a barrier to protect the road along Sunset from the condos to the turning basin there where the road goes. I think we ought to pursue that, if directly ignore the county on their project, but we've got to get some conceptual ideas that we can shop with the Corps directly.
And so understand that I 100% believe in cooperation and working with other levels of government. I think it's a must being a small city. But I also believe that, as to what you said, we could be on our own. And so we can't just sit back and say, well, the county's taking care of it, because I'm telling you, that's not the case. And so, yeah, I'm reading what the Army Corps had sent me. And again, I'll throw these out. So they're looking at a possible CAT 103 initiation report and a CAT 14 effort report. So if you guys know what that is, please let me know, because I've spoken to them a dozen times and I still don't understand those things. But I do know that if they're doing that and they have our name on it, that opens up the possibility of funding later on that we really want. So my effort is really right now to try to keep City of Port Richey in their wording on these initiation reports, and whatever I can get on that initiation report, hopefully it's to be, because again, we kind of hit the sweet spot for everything that they're looking at. We have blue sky flooding occurring in the city, and that's something that, at least up until this point, I can't guarantee. After January 20th, if there's going to be a priority on that, but right now there is a priority in the Army Corps for looking at those climate situations that are occurring, and this is a big one. So anything that we can do to help that is beneficial to us.
Well, one of the things that hoped to do on the second part was to kind of identify those roads. We've certainly talked about Bay last time, but Sunset, as far as I know, is probably the most exposed road in the city as far as just about anything. I can't speak to the other side, like Washington and where the river bends around there on Grand, but I think that's a little bit higher than Sunset.
Sunset is experiencing direct blue sky flooding
All the time.
Yeah. Bay Boulevard is an indirect blue sky flooding, because in and of itself it wouldn't flood if not the cross connections into the canals. You take those away, then it doesn't flood. But
Well, and what I was hoping for the second part of today's meeting, my bias was to hopefully figure out how to escalate Sunset, or at least figure out what we need to get to. What information do we need? Do we need grades all along Sunset as a starting point? Do we have information there as far as elevations that we can compare and contrast to the 2070 or 2040 or the blue sky flooding? Do we have that information at our fingertips today, or do we need to get it? Derek.
So that map I have in my truck shows what the elevations were in 1989
For Sunset.
for the entire city.
Okay.
But as we know, since 1989 till now, the tides have changed. Just like there's a flap that got put in that goes to the back of Davis. I forget the lady's house that she lives across the street from Sherry Chair, right there. That flap was put in 1996. Well, where that flap is now, it always stays half full. So back then, when it was dry, everything was able to dissipate out. Well, it's not like that anymore. So it just shows right there that the whatever it is, it's higher than what it was back then.
For sure.
Right, but you have that map you're describing has elevations.
Yeah, I'll go get it.
Let's just do it next
Yeah.
rodeo.
Okay.
If we can get that to Ashley to send out to us, and we'll put item 2 on the agenda for next, and that'll be a starting point that we can review before we come to the meeting. If she can, I don't know what it looks like, but if it's something that we can digitize, maybe that would be.
Sections of it.
So at Davis and Sunset flood because of the Marina's boat ramp.
Yes.
It comes up floods right there. Obviously, because the road is lower than the tide.
Right.
And down by where Pat Rogers lives, that also floods. And in the middle, kind of close by where the Indian Mound is, just to the east of it, it floods as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that just shows you right there, the road is lower than the tide.
That part, I see it, so I believe it.
Yeah.
What I want to do is figure out what can we package and what conversations can we have with the Corps, because that's a federal waterway. To Matt's earlier comment, is coming out of that waterway and it's affecting our community directly. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah.
And it's affecting an important safety thoroughfare for the public to evacuate. And I'm not sure how many people live how many units in that condo there, Matt? Any idea? The one there at the end of Sunset by the marina?
Yeah, the 3 or 4 story one.
That's probably
25,
I would say no more than 40.
40. But anyway, we got a substantial population there that Sunset's a critical potential evacuation route that we ought to be able to get the Army Corps off their duff with some basic information. And even as long as we have the basic information, we show elevations, we'll translate them to our 2040. I mean, we're running into stuff since 2015, all right? 2010, or whatever, once we look at it. But then by 2040, we're completely inundated. And by 2070, forget it. So let's get them focused on.
And I think, you know, a connection to all of this is that when you get into like the surge, both in Idalia and definitely with Helene. So when you look at the way this water comes in, there's paths that follow, right? And as soon as it passes this point right here, which is limestone, which is our evacuation route, right?
So limestone's the designated evacuation route?
Yeah, that's the one that takes care of everything. So again, what we say is that this blue sky flooding, as it keeps going, and you pull it out a number of years, could have an impact on our evacuation route because of the path that this water is following. Because if you look at the dead trees, follow the dead trees,
Right.
and you see exactly how where the water comes from first and where it leaves last, and it comes right down through here.
I mean, I'm willing to put together a brief story that we could do a briefing to Army Corps about that if I could just get the base information. At least the conversations, and these guys mentioned the other day, the small projects group, you know, they've got like 10 to 20 million to spend on things. If we can at least start telling the story, work it through the channels, and get something freed up, you know, to me that looks like a potential shovel ready or close to shovel ready type thing because it's been happening. It's not new news.
Right.
So let's put that. Ashley, when you were out, Daryl's going to get with you on some details that he has specifically around. If we focus on Sunset, that would be good.
Okay.
And figure out how we can digitize that to get it out to the member so we can at least review that beforehand.
So to let you know, this was the map that as I was getting a meeting set up with Richard Butler, is the guy from the Army Corps, not the head person, but the person that's been working with us.
He's in Jacksonville.
I think he is, yeah, pretty sure. And so he had asked me for this next meeting we were going to have is to kind of, although he didn't want to know about where the fire department was, he just wanted to know where our lift stations. So I identified the lift stations, but I also went and identified where the Indian Mound is.
Mm-hmm.
I also identified by the orange lines where we're experiencing the blue sky flooding.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, this is kind of my action map that I keep bringing to him to try to get that small project initiation report off the ground.
Now, on the blue sky, we're not showing anywhere else along the river.
Yeah.
And on the blue sky, do we have an elevation that we're describing that? The reason why I ask is that through the culverts, we've had street closures in Harbor Isles, okay? That is not too much different than Sunset because it backflows in. It doesn't overtop like
Right.
Sunset, but are we shorting ourselves?
Oh, definitely.
All right, so
And these, and I'll tell you the reason why I have gone with these is because we have pictures. So I don't have any pictures of those. So if we, and I'll tell you, to FEMA, to the Army Corps, pictures are gold. If you have a picture that shows it, they are more willing to listen to you than just describing it.
I think if we can get the numbers and describe what it is, I may be able to dig up some pictures, at least of that area. But I think the key thing is if we can come away and say, blue sky deal at a 1.5 or a 3.5 is limiting access, they're going to understand what that is. And here are all the places that are impacted by that. And this is to the degree, see this picture. All right. So I think that part is what I would hope to have, that we could say, okay, let's get off the dang dime.
Because on Sunset, you can drive down during high tide and the road's flooded.
Yes.
At any day of the week.
Yeah. I mean, if we have the high and it's running in a +3, you'll get your tires wet.
Yeah, because I have pictures where it's in April. Blue sky, blue out, and it's
Crazy.
flooded at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Destroys your car too. Destroys
It's
your
not good for the road because the road's not really
Yeah, the
forced
road's
out
not
there, so it
made
kind
for
of just sits and ruins the road.
Jesus, yeah, that too.
So we've got a lot of great ideas. So we're going to focus on Sunset.
That would be my suggestion.
I absolutely
Just so
think
we
that's
could get
great.
Yeah.
something, unless I hear something from somebody else that says,
I think we got to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and I think we're going to start taking little bites and trying to make some difference. I agree with you 100%.
so,
Sunset and Bay
Getting-
Boulevard, right?
I'm sorry.
Sunset and Bay Boulevard. Those are like the
Well,
two.
the Bay is, we've got in the hopper to a degree, from Wilkins to Old Post.
Mhm.
All right. So Sunset, we don't have in the hopper other than some loose discussions. Let's get some meat on the bones. And then if we can get more meat on the bones for Bay, we will. But let's look at Sunset because those folks have been impacted for a long time. And let's get a package together. If we can at least get one package together, then we can say, okay, let's do package 2. Package 1 worked. Let's do package 2, 3, 4, whatever it happens to be. But I'm anxious for one package if we can get to that. And I think the evacuation route is a really viable one to chase.
Three things: Indian Mountain, critical infrastructure, so our sanitary sewer system, and evacuation. Those are the three things that kind of tie this all together.
And the one thing that we can do because we have 2 boat ramps there, but one of the things that we can potentially do if we get the Corps to respond is to mandate some protections for those ramps during during off business hours, if you will, or unused hours, however we figure out how to do that, because that will all be required. And certainly you go to New Orleans and they have stuff that they put in place. So there's no reason why we can't do that. We just need to figure out what we want and how to do that to protect that part of our coast. All right.
So what's the process for that? So who is responsible for doing what?
Next week, we're going to pick up item 2, bring that forward next month, sorry. Bring that forward. Daryl's going to have some elevation stuff for us. We'll have a conversation. We probably will need to hold session for that topic so we can get something done if everybody is agreeable on that. So I'm willing to go there, and if you guys are good on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want me to just make something like I did last time with the elevations when I sent out?
Yeah, I think if we can get it beforehand,
Yeah,
not
you'll
coming
have
in
it.
cold turkey, would help me. And we'll do that. And then the other thing, Matt, that I'll do is I'll look for the Florida archaeological stuff
Okay.
and send that to you, because I think if we get that out and we find that there's several others in the community, we can leverage that on anything else that we're doing. Whether we have the details about it or not, it exists.
Is there something that where Olsner Park is located?
I haven't looked at the county has some information, but the state has all the
It
information.
looks like he's got a secret.
Yeah. Does anybody know? I say it because I actually early on had a wide-ranging discussion with representatives from the county on where the Indian Mound was located, and they identified it at Olsner Park.
Because it's the Olsner Mound.
Yeah, I'm assuming. I mean, I'm saying, hopefully that's not why. I'm hoping that maybe there's something significant there that they know that I didn't know. And so,
Given my time in the area, if you go to like Philippi Park in Pinellas County, that's mounds there. But a lot of the parks, I don't know our history on our parks specifically, but oftentimes what you'll find is the vacant land had something.
mhm.
So if it has something, let's validate it.
Right.
And again, as what I've discovered is if it exists at the state level, it's a viable entity that all the government entities will salute. And given what's going out in California right now with all the cultural stuff they've lost, I think we can play that to our benefit if we can say we've got this here, here, and here, and I got to believe the river has something more.
I think there's probably a lot more than what we understand with it, because I mean, again, in preparing for our centennial, doing some reading on the history here, there's things that I know in other states would have been by the state in those different states would have been designated as a historical area, but it doesn't appear that it's been done here. And understanding again where those are located, because again, a lot of what I read doesn't really say it's located here. It says somewhere around the point. And it's like, okay, which point?
Yeah, I think Clark's has been here for a long time. There might be some things in that area around the Waterfront Overlay District. But I think if we get this source information, then we'll have something to base on, and then any unknown stuff. But I would certainly encourage, from a building department standpoint, encourage any of the permits that we issue, maybe there's even a clause, if you discover anything, please let us know. Stop you from doing stuff, but at least if you would let us know, that might be something, I don't know. But does that satisfy what you were talking about in this first?
And one of the things I did write down was that was surprised me at the meeting was when we talked to somebody, either you or Chris mentioned, we need to have like diamond, we need to have something a draw, and they keyed right on Journey Key. They're like, you do have it, and I'm like, and I brought that up to Matt. I'm like, don't we own Journey Key? So what? Because this Dr. Wong is all over Journey Key, and he's gonna go out there, and he's gonna. So I was a little.
What was he saying about Journey Key?
I'm sorry.
What was he saying about Journey
Well, he
Key?
wasn't saying anything because this doctor is going out there who's going to be addressing the whole coastline.
Okay.
And that it was
That-
what were the terms he was using?
Basically,
Yeah.
there's a study going on for resiliency on Journey Key. It's cooperatively with USF, and I think the EMC is involved and stuff. And the way the county was presenting it
Yes.
was as the canary in the coal mine
Yes.
routine. I was not personally drinking that Kool-Aid kind of to what you were talking about. Okay, county, that's what you think is going on. I think there's bigger nuts that we can cook with the state and with Audubon versus Journey Key.
But what were
I
they
agree, but I just
saying?
wanted to bring it up as a point that we
Right.
need to make sure. That's Journey Key is ours, correct?
I don't know about that one.
And that's not,
I don't know, that's,
yeah.
it's state, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But what are they trying, but what is the discussion around Journey Key is my
The
question.
resiliency and
The
how
resiliency.
that barrier island is affecting the Cody River and how we can potentially,
Green and gray
Enhance.
protections. They're doing oyster balls and stuff like that, and seeing their viability and protecting against erosion. It's like, all right.
I mean, it's like disappearing. That's like, that was a good thing,
It's.
you know?
I think there's better ways to skin the cat, personally. But okay,
Well, I think we had met with a representative from the Audubon like a year ago. This was a long time ago, and I think the lands at the Audubon. I mean, that's where the canary in the coal mine is, because and I don't know what his time horizon really has been, but it seemed like a long time. And he's talking about the changes that's happening at the Audubon land from when they first acquired it before to today is significant. And I think
What are they saying has changed so much?
water.
Just like,
Yeah, it's he was actually, I think
there was more dry land in the past than there is.
Yeah, and a number of the bigger trees are
dying.
dead. Yeah, because of the saltwater intrusion.
I have one question, and I'm just curious because somebody might have the answer here. But I was talking to Mike Perez, and he was saying to me that the water is rising an inch a year, and I was like, well, geez, if that's the case, that's really alarming. And I didn't think that it was that. I thought it was like more like an inch every 10 years, But it really seems that in the past 10, 15 years, like there's really some uptick.
That's when we talked to the city presenting stuff. That
But what is it? Like, the
last
really,
20 years has been much more accelerated than it was over the previous 80 years, and they're going to continue to accelerate. What it is today, you can certainly debate, but
yeah,
I think if we look at some of our information that we've produced, it's in there, and I think that's as accurate as you're going to get. And certainly the vulnerability study has things on events that are helpful. And I think before we get into next week's meeting, I would encourage everybody to kind of re-review some of that stuff
From
that
half.
we pulled together. Not only the half stuff, but I think the numbers that we put in, the one schematic that we have this city and how many inches it's increased over time, that's pretty much on point to the 2020 timeframe. So, but from 2020 forward, it was going at a much steeper rate. So, but I think next session, one of the things we should come away with, if we know the elevations of the road, we need to agree that, okay, by 2040, at that rate, we're going to need this. And by 2070, we're going to need that.
right.
We need to be ready to have that conversation amongst us next time, is what I would suggest. So prepare yourselves for that. So we're all at least knowledgeable. And so when Daryl brings the information, when he says, well, we're at a +2 at sunset, well, we're going to be at a +3 for blue water tide situations. Guess what? We got to minimally do that. And then if we have a 25-year storm, we got another 2 feet on top of that. So what do we want to go after for this solution? Does it need to be 3 feet or 3.5? What does it have to be? What do we need to go to the core with? That's what I would hope for. Or we
Interesting.
could do that in an hour. That'd be great. So, all right. Any other conversation before we go? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait. So on your desk, I put the flyer for the coastal master plan, Tampa Bay Coastal Master. So we are a part of this. They received $2 million, 1.9, something like that, from NOAA to put together a coastal master plan for the Tampa Bay area, which we're included in. On the 21st, they're going to be having kickoff where they'll be doing some work to start that project. they indicated we could have 3 to 4 representatives. I'm going to try to get a representative council to go. And I don't know if there's anybody here. I mean, I was going to attend as well. If we get another representative from this committee, I think would be a good thing. So if I could get a volunteer so I could register the people, it would be great.
I'll go. Well, you're from the city, though.
Yeah.
It would be better. I mean, it's okay if you go. I'm not
Yeah,
saying-
yeah. It's like I said, we have kind of clear, and she said 4 or 5. So
Well, how about putting my name down and then
Yeah.
you're a
Yeah.
possibility and certainly
Yeah,
you're possible. But just at least put my name down and then we'll make sure, by next meeting, we'll firm up all the schedules, and if something falls out, then we'll do the Texas two-step.
Yeah, I'm good to go. Since I'm not working anymore.
Good for you.
I've got a lot of free time.
That's awesome.
Not really, that's why I was late.
Jesus
It's
Christ.
too free with your time.
TV
The
Time is
time.
getting in the way.
This is
sarcasm.
this is my first real day of doing nothing.
You know, when you worked, you were on time.
I was, you're right, early.
the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the Tampa Bay Regional Planning and the Regional Resiliency Summit Group, whatever group that is. I think they're all one and the same, to be honest, but who knows anymore. They have their Resiliency Summit. This year it's May 15th and 16th in Palmetto. Now, last year I went, the mayor attended one of the days, Chris Leeds attended one of the days. I'm going to try to get all council to go because I think it's a very valuable
Mm-hmm.
resource to understand what's going on in the region, all these different ideas, which I think will help formulate better planning going forward. I think members of this committee should go as well. I have to figure out how to fund all this, by the way, but that's, this I think is an important thing. So it's the 15th and 16th. We're going to need to get registered probably in the next month or so. So maybe the next meeting, if you can attend that and you're interested in attending that, if you go to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Commission, and I'll have Ashley send a link out to everyone, you can see kind of what was the different things from previous years. But it definitely, I think, unfortunately, the first day when Chris was there was the best day of the 2 days. The second day, because they have their luncheon and everything, it's kind of short and not a lot of good information. There's some information, but the first day was probably the best information. So if you could at least get the first day, if not both days, it would be good as well. So
From my perspective on any of those types of events, at least if we could get one seat from the committee, that would be helpful. That way that person can bring back information, plus we can share it with any city members that go as well. Because I think it's incredibly important for us to be publicly viewable, and then for those things that we need to work on the side doors, we work those as appropriate because they'll know we've already been there. So that's my take.
well, and one of the things on the first day was a number of the state representatives of different agencies were there that I was able to talk to about different things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led us to being able to submit wanting to submit for the resiliency grants, because he had said, probably you won't get funded, but we keep track of what you're submitting, and that goes towards the points that you get to get funded later on. So there is a lot of value there besides what you're learning from other cities.
If we have a larger group go to some of these functions, if you were to put together things that are important to us or hot topics right now that we could share and say, when you get into that conversation with so-and-so, at least this little cheat sheet says, you know what, that's something we're looking at too. Who can I connect with so we can be all proselytizing to whoever to help our end game.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
So look at your schedule, May 15th, 16th. We'll talk about it at the next meeting.
You
They
said
haven't-
that's
They
Palmetto?
haven't set what the workshop or the different things are. They're still working on that, so we don't know yet what the different presentations are going to be. But
Okay. Very good. Anything else? All right. So,
Now you want me to wait. Oh,
sorry, so much going through my mind
Jesus.
right now. I apologize. Going back to the Tampa Bay regional planning, I think it would be time well spent. And I know you're having someone coming the next meeting, but if I can get someone to come from Tampa Bay to talk here as well and talk about what services they could provide to us, if not this next one, the next meeting.
no, sooner is better.
Okay.
No, basically, the only thing that I can think about right now is what we're deferring to the next meeting, inviting the state resources to come. All right, and if we have somebody from Tampa Bay Regional talk about what kind of resources they have available, I think that would help all of us.
but it helped him too because he was knee deep underwater too. When I went and met with him, first initial,
Right.
he had all the drywall in his shop was
Is
out
out,
as well.
right.
So whatever we do is we'll give him ammunition because his boss is the state, right?
Right.
So it'll give him ammunition. I would think so. I think it would probably be beneficial to him as well to hear it.
I think that's why he wanted to engage
Yeah, he was very excited
to a
when I
degree.
talked about
And also, they always had a long laundry list of things that they needed to do from a restoration standpoint. Those things all got pushed back. So anything that can be moved forward, there's a benefit there. It helps them out. So, yeah, I think
Okay, I will get that set up.
we'll fine tune the agenda with Ashley, but I think
Yeah, between the two.
if we can get somebody booked on, that's a good thing.
Okay, we'll do. I'll set up
it. Absolutely.
All right.
Motion to adjourn. Seems to be my job.
Second.
All in favor?